The morning sun rose over the quiet town of Willow Creek, its golden rays glinting off rows of parked cars outside Ben's auto repairs. Inside the workshop, the rhythmic clang of tools echoed, a symphony of hammers, wrenches, and the steady heart of a man who worked with his soul. Ben Turner was not just a mechanic. He was a craftsman, known for fixing anything from broken trucks to old tractors. But lately something weighed on his heart heavier than the engines he lifted. It started a week ago when Ben noticed a little boy limping past his shop window. The boy couldn't have been more than 10, wearing worn-out sneakers, one dragging awkwardly behind him. His name was Eli, the son of a single mother, Sarah, who worked double shifts at the diner across the street. Everyone in town knew the story. Eli had lost part of his leg in a car accident 2 years earlier. His family couldn't afford a prosthetic leg, so he hobbled on a crude wooden crutch, his eyes always downcast. That morning, as Ben wiped grease off his hands, he saw Eli standing outside, staring at an old go-kart in the corner. Ben smiled. "Hey, kid, you like cars?" Eli nodded shyly. "I do, sir, but I can't run or ride anymore." His voice trembled, half embarrassment, half longing. Ben knelt beside him, noticing the rough splinters on Eli's crutch. "That thing hurting you?" Eli shrugged. "Sometimes, but it's okay. Mom says we'll get a new one someday." Ben looked at him for a long moment. He'd seen many broken machines in his life, but never had he seen a spirit that small yet that strong. Something stirred inside him. Maybe it was because Ben had lost his own father young. Maybe because he knew what it meant to go without. Whatever it was, he couldn't shake it off. That night, long after the shop closed, the sound of tools echoed again. But this time, Ben wasn't fixing an engine. He was sketching, measuring, cutting. A piece of oak wood lay on his workbench, unstrung, smooth, with a natural curve. He sanded it carefully, shaping it inch by inch. The workshop light cast his shadow on the wall, like a sculptor creating a miracle. For 3 nights, Ben worked in silence, carving, adjusting, and testing every joint. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he was determined to try. On the 4th morning, Sarah came running into the shop, panic in her eyes. "Ben, did you see Eli?" "He said he was coming here." Before Ben could answer, the door opened and there was Eli, smiling from ear to ear. On his leg was the wooden prosthetic Ben had made. It was rough, not perfect, but beautifully functional. Eli took a step, then another, then ran. The sound of his laughter filled the workshop, echoing against the walls. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "Oh my God, he's running," she whispered. Ben stood there watching quietly, his heart full. "It's not much," he said softly. "Just some wood and metal scraps. But it'll do till he gets a real one." Sarah turned to him, still crying. "You don't understand. You just gave my boy his life back." Ben smiled, blinking away his own tears. "Nah, he already had it. I just fixed the parts." The next morning, Willow Creek felt different, as if the town itself was lighter, brighter. Word had spread fast. People at the diner whispered between coffee cups. Truck drivers passing through slowed to glance at Ben's little garage, and customers came not just for oil changes anymore, but to see the man who had built a leg out of wood for a boy who couldn't walk. Ben didn't know any of that. He was under the hood of a rusty pickup, sweat dripping from his brow, when Eli burst through the door again, this time running. "Mr. Ben, look." The boy's laughter bounced off every wall. He was showing off his new wooden leg like it was a trophy. Sarah followed, smiling but teary-eyed. "He hasn't stopped moving since yesterday," she said, her voice trembling with joy. Ben grinned, pretending to scold the boy. "Hey now, you'll wear that thing out before I can paint it." But inside, he felt something he hadn't in years. Pride, pure and unfiltered. Eli spent the whole afternoon at the shop, handing Ben tools, asking questions about every nut and bolt. It was as if a light had switched on in the boy's world. Every sound, the clink of metal, the hiss of air pressure, fascinated him. "You really love fixing things, huh?" Ben asked. Eli nodded, eyes wide. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Ben laughed softly. "You're already better than me, kid. You got a stronger heart." That night, after closing, Ben looked around his old shop. The cracked floor tiles, faded posters, oil-stained walls. It all suddenly felt alive again. For years he had lived alone, fixing machines but never touching hearts. But one small act of kindness had changed that. The following days were a blur. People began stopping by, dropping off cookies, thank you notes, even money envelopes. Someone even left a brand new toolbox with a note, "For the man who builds hope." Ben didn't know how to react. He wasn't looking for fame, he just wanted to help. But not everyone saw it that way. A local prosthetics company owner, Mr. Collins, caught wind of the story. He didn't like how people were praising some grease-covered mechanic for what he called a reckless homemade leg. He showed up at Ben's shop one afternoon, dressed in a crisp suit that didn't belong in a place that smelled of gasoline. "You must be Ben Turner," he said coldly. "I hear you've been playing doctor." Ben wiped his hands on a rag and raised an eyebrow. "I'm just a mechanic. Helped a boy walk, that's all." Mr. Collins smirked. "You think you're a hero? You built that thing without a license. If something happens to that child, it's your responsibility." For a moment, Ben's chest tightened. He hadn't thought of that, but before he could respond, Eli's voice came from the back. "Mr. Ben didn't hurt me. He helped me." Collins looked startled as the boy limped forward, determination in his eyes. "He made me run again." "You didn't." Ben placed a hand gently on Eli's shoulder. "It's okay, kid. Go on home now." Then he turned to Collins. "I didn't build it for praise or profit. I built it because no one else would." Collins glared at him. "You'll regret this," he hissed before leaving. That night Ben couldn't sleep. His mind swirled with doubts. Had he done the right thing? What if the leg broke and hurt the boy? He sat at his workbench, staring at his hands. The same hands that fixed engines, that had built something out of love, now trembling with uncertainty. But then a small knock came at the door. It was Sarah and Eli. "Ben," Sarah said softly, "Eli wanted to give you something." The boy held out a folded drawing, a stick figure man beside a boy with a wooden leg. Above them were the words, "My hero Ben." Ben stared at it, his throat tight. He knelt down and hugged the boy. "You just gave me more than I ever gave you." The next week began like any other. The hum of engines, the smell of oil, the clang of tools. But by Friday, everything changed. Ben was under a car, tightening a bolt when his phone buzzed nonstop on the workbench. He almost ignored it, until Sarah came rushing into the shop, breathless and holding her phone. "Ben, you need to see this." On the screen was a Facebook post, a photo of Eli running with his wooden leg, sunlight catching his smile. The caption read, "A small-town mechanic built hope out of wood. Meet Ben Turner, the man who gave my son his legs back." In less than 24 hours, the post had exploded. Tens of thousands of likes, comments, and shares. People from around the country were writing things like, "Faith in humanity restored," and "We need more people like Ben." Ben stared at the screen, speechless. I never meant for this to go online," he muttered. Sarah smiled through tears. "You didn't have to. The world needed to see that kindness still exists." By the next morning, news vans were parked outside his garage. Reporters surrounded him, microphones flashing, cameras rolling. "Mr. Turner, how did you make the leg? Why did you decide to help? Do you plan to build more?" Ben's hands shook as he faced the crowd. He wasn't used to attention. He was a man of few words and calloused hands. "I just saw a kid who needed help," he said simply. Anyone could have done the same. The video of his humble response went even more viral than the original post. Soon, TV stations were calling. A charity offered to sponsor proper prosthetics for Eli and dozens of other children like him. Donations started pouring into a fund that Sarah had set up for kids in need. Every evening, Ben would sit on his old stool, watching the chaos outside his little garage, trying to make sense of it all. "I just fixed one leg," he told his reflection one night. "Now the whole world's looking at me." But not all the attention was good. Mr. Collins, the prosthetics manufacturer, saw his company losing customers. His pride stung more than his profits. He began telling people that Ben's story was fake, that Eli's leg was dangerous, that the mechanic was just seeking fame. One night, while Ben was closing up shop, he found a note pinned to his door. It read, "Stop pretending to be a hero before someone gets hurt." Ben sighed and looked up at the stars. "I never wanted to be a hero," he whispered. Just wanted to help one kid. The next day, Eli came in again holding a newspaper with Ben's picture on the front. "You're famous now," he said proudly. Ben chuckled. "Famous for doing what people should do anyway." He knelt down beside the boy. "Listen, Eli, kindness isn't about attention. It's about doing what's right, even when nobody's watching." Eli nodded, as if the words carved themselves into his young heart. Later that week, something unexpected happened. A university professor from Chicago called Ben. He'd seen the viral story and wanted to visit. "Your craftsmanship is extraordinary," the man said over the phone. "We'd like to study your design. It could inspire affordable prosthetics for low-income families worldwide." Ben froze. "You mean this little wooden leg could help other kids too? More than you can imagine," the professor replied. For the first time, Ben felt something deeper than pride: purpose. He realized this wasn't just about one boy, one leg, or one act of kindness. It was about showing the world that ordinary people can make extraordinary change. That night, as the town lights shimmered and the sound of laughter drifted from the diner, Ben stood by his workbench tracing the grain of a new piece of wood. He smiled. "Guess we're not done yet, huh, partner?" he whispered to the empty shop. Though in his heart he was speaking to Eli, to hope, and to the spirit of giving that had ignited a movement. Fame can be a strange thing. One day it lifts you to the skies, the next it tests how strong your heart truly is. For Ben Turner, the humble mechanic from Willow Creek, that test came sooner than he ever expected. It was a cold Wednesday morning when a black SUV pulled up outside his shop. Two men in suits stepped out carrying clipboards and serious expressions. "Mr. Turner?" one of them asked. "We're from the State Health and Safety Department. We've received reports that you've been manufacturing unlicensed prosthetic devices." Ben's stomach dropped. "I didn't manufacture anything. I just built something for a boy who needed help." The man scribbled notes. "Regardless of intent, it's still against state regulation. We'll need you to stop immediately. Continued activity could lead to legal action." Ben's voice cracked. "Legal action? For helping a child walk again?" The men didn't answer. They handed him a notice and left, leaving behind silence heavier than steel. That afternoon, Ben sat in his empty shop staring at the paper. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. His hands, the same hands that had built dreams out of wood, now trembled over words like violation and penalty. Eli came by later, cheerful as ever. "Mr. Ben, I told my school about you. They said you're a hero." Ben smiled weakly. "Thanks, kid. But your hero might be in a bit of trouble." The boy frowned. "Did you do something bad?" Ben shook his head slowly. "No, son. Sometimes even when you do good, the world doesn't understand it right away." That night, the shop stayed dark. For the first time, no tools moved, no engines roared. Ben sat on the floor, surrounded by scraps of wood, thinking about everything. The laughter, the hope, the joy in that boy's eyes. Was it all worth losing his shop over? Just then his phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Ben, turn on the TV, right now." He did, and froze. The evening news was showing a segment titled, "The Mechanic Who Changed Lives and Faces Backlash." They interviewed locals, showing Eli running across the field, his wooden leg gleaming under sunlight. Sarah's voice came through the screen. "Ben Turner didn't break the law. He built love. My son walks because of him." The anchor continued. "A petition has been launched online, urging the state to drop any potential charges and to recognize Ben's innovation as a humanitarian effort." Within hours, it's reached over 100,000 signatures. Ben couldn't believe it. His small act of kindness, once scolded and questioned, had now sparked a movement. By morning, dozens of people gathered outside his garage, holding signs that read, "Let Ben build." And kindness isn't a crime. Reporters filled the street again. But this time Ben didn't hide. He stepped outside, his hands greasy, his eyes tired, yet filled with quiet strength. He spoke to the cameras, his voice steady. "I never asked for attention. I just wanted to help a boy who couldn't afford help. If that's wrong, then I guess I'll always be guilty of kindness." The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah and Eli stood in the front row, tears streaming down their faces. 2 days later, the story reached even higher. The university professor who'd contacted Ben earlier spoke publicly in his defense, calling his design a breakthrough in low-cost prosthetics. Lawmakers began taking notice. Discussion started about changing policies to allow community-based makers to help in humanitarian cases. And then, a letter arrived. It was from the Health and Safety Department. Ben opened it slowly, heart pounding. Inside it read, "After careful review and overwhelming public support, your case has been dismissed. Your actions have inspired us to explore new guidelines for affordable prosthetic development. Thank you for reminding us what compassion looks like." Ben read it twice, hardly believing the words. He set the letter down, smiled, and looked at Eli, who was now running circles around the shop. "Looks like we passed the test, partner," Ben said softly. Months passed since that day, and Willow Creek had changed forever. What was once a quiet little town had become a symbol of kindness and innovation. Ben's humble garage now had a new sign above the door, Turner's Workshop of Hope. He didn't charge for his work anymore. People donated materials, volunteers joined in, and together they built low-cost prosthetic limbs for children from nearby towns. Every week a new family came through those garage doors, a child leaving with tears of joy and a heart full of courage. Eli had become Ben's little helper. He'd learned how to sand wood, measure parts, even tighten bolts with precision. His once timid smile was now confident, full of life. "One day I'll build legs for other kids too," he told Ben proudly. Ben grinned. "I know you will, buddy. You've got magic in those hands." But one day, something unexpected arrived in the mail again. A large envelope stamped with a gold seal. Inside was a formal letter. "Mr. Ben Turner, you are hereby invited to Washington, D.C. to receive the National Humanitarian Award for Innovative Community Service. Your kindness has inspired millions and changed lives across the nation." Ben's hands trembled. He'd never even left the state before. "Washington, D.C.? He whispered, staring at the letter as Eli jumped with excitement beside him. "You're famous now, Mr. Ben. You're going to meet the president." The whole town gathered to send him off. Sarah handed him a small box wrapped in brown paper. "Open it when you're there," she said with a wink. When Ben arrived in the grand hall days later, dressed in a simple suit borrowed from a neighbor, he felt completely out of place among the polished shoes and glittering lights. But when his name was called, the crowd stood in thunderous applause. As he stepped onto the stage, cameras flashed, and the host's voice echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, this year's National Humanitarian Award goes to Ben Turner, the mechanic who turned wood and compassion into miracles." Ben took the microphone, nervous but sincere. I don't know much about awards," he began. "I only know about fixing what's broken, engines, hearts, whatever needs care. I didn't build that leg for praise. I built it because a little boy reminded me that hope doesn't have to cost anything." The crowd rose again, clapping, cheering, many with tears in their eyes. Cameras zoomed in on his humble smile, the smile of a man who never wanted the spotlight but earned it by following his heart. After the ceremony, Ben sat alone for a moment, opening the box Sarah had given him. Inside was a small wooden keychain shaped like a leg, carved by Eli himself. On it were the words, "For the man who gave me wings." Ben's eyes filled with tears. "Guess I'm the lucky one after all," he whispered. When he returned home, a surprise was waiting. The same professor from Chicago had partnered with engineers and doctors to develop a new line of affordable prosthetics based on Ben's design. They named the project the Turner Limb. It was light, inexpensive, and designed for children in developing countries. And the best part? Every limb had a tiny engraving that read, "Made with kindness." Months later, Ben received a video message. It showed children in hospitals across the world, kids from Africa, India, and South America, all running, laughing, dancing. Wearing his design, Eli stood beside him watching, eyes wide with wonder. "They're all walking, Mr. Ben. You helped all of them." Ben smiled softly, tears glistening under the workshop light. "No, Eli," he said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We helped them. You started it when you walked through my door that day." The camera in his shop captured that moment. A mechanic with rough hands, a child with a wooden leg, and a world that had changed because of one simple act of kindness.